everybody. My name is Lefu Matafeng. Welcome to Encounters Documentary Film Festival's Q&A session of the incredible film Lefu, The Funeral. Joining me today is the director of this film, Omelga Mtiane. Omelga, thank you so much for being with us today and welcome to the Q&A.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So just to start us off, could you tell us a little bit more about your background and your work?
I come from, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me. Being part of the Encounters is really incredible. It's really something that means a lot to me since, well, I regard Encounters my home in many different ways, because I think that's where I was sort of found as a filmmaker, as a documentary filmmaker. I remember attending the first lab at the Encounters, which sort of introduced me to filmmaking, you know. So I'm forever grateful, and I'm glad that Lefu has made it again this year, because I've had several films at the Encounters, and you know, yeah, I'm really, really grateful. So my background, I come from a place called Inanda in Durban, a place that I'm very proud of because of its historical background. And that's where I was born and bred, basically. And I went to the Durban University of Technology there to do video technology. Went back again to do my BTech, which is equivalent to the honors degree in film and television. You know, so you know, the place where I come from in Nanda, that's where I source out my stories most of the time. I started with sort of personal narratives, and I also been inspired by the place itself. Inanda, I've made another film called Inanda My Heritage. It's a very rich place in history. You know, when you know Dr. Langadibale Dube, who is a co-founder of African National Congress, with Pixley Gaseme. They both come from the area. Ali Wendlela, Prophet Ushembe also comes from this area, Inanda. And even when Mahatma Gandhi was in South Africa, he stayed in Inanda, you know. So I'm very proud of coming from this place that has made me the person that I am today. So as I said, my stories come from the close to me. I always try to identify stories that I'm inspired by, that are close to me, but also from the area that I come from. So that's basically, I think, who I am in terms of documentary filmmaking, how I became a documentary filmmaker.
And it's incredible to hear that this year with Lefu, The Funeral, this is a homecoming for you. And it's incredible also to hear about your background and the rich history that also informs your storytelling. And just to take us into the film itself, Lefu, The Funeral is compassionate in how it captures its subject matters and evocative in its editing. It deals with one of the many devastating realities of the COVID-19 pandemic. It is a timely film that reflects on the disruptive nature of the pandemic, and we see how it's interrupted or disrupted burial practices and how they have changed to accommodate COVID-19 guidelines, you know, disrupting very essential processes of loss and grief for many South Africans. And I just wanted to find out, you know, how you came to make this film and what inspired you to make it.
I think COVID-19 came as a shock to many of us. But also so unpredictable in many different ways. No one knew what to expect and all of that, you know, and especially when it came close home, because I mean, at first you were here from other part of the world, there's something like this, but when it came close to home, it became something really devastating in many different ways. You know, it means that we could never live our lives the way we used to anymore. And when the lockdown was announced in March 2020, I was in Johannesburg. I couldn't leave for home in Durban in time. So I'm in my house in Soweto, 3-bedroom house by myself during lockdown. I was a bit disturbed, you know, a bit depressed in many different ways. You know, I couldn't be in contact with anyone, with my people at home. And then I will listen to news so that I will know what is happening around the world or around me, in terms of COVID. And one of the things that we announced was that during funerals now, you will have a limited number, 50 people that could attend the funeral, but also certain rituals will not be observed anymore because, the disease is contagious. And, coming from a Zulu background, a very cultural background, I was a bit disturbed by that. And I was like, so, what do we do, if you lose your loved one, losing someone alone is devastating. But then when you also cannot perform certain rituals, it's even more painful, but also we believe that when someone passes away, it's not the end, but it's the beginning of a new life for them. We believe in ancestors. But in order for this communication or this relationship to continue happening between the living and those who have gone to the other side, you need to observe certain rituals, So when I hear that, I was a bit disturbed, but then, I sort of like, I was busy with my dissertation and for my master's, and I was just doing a couple of other things, but being logged in. And when I heard about this, announcement from the Documentary Filmmakers Association that they're looking for stories, I went wild because it's like, okay, like at last I have something to do, So I wrote several proposals to them, and Lefu was one of them, and they selected Lefu, and I was grateful. But at the same time, I knew there was a challenge coming because now making the film, how do I even approach families that have lost their loved one and say, I would like to make a film, And indeed, the process was challenging because, initially we thought we were just going to ask officials who know, maybe who work with hospitals or who will, help us identify stories and families. And that did not help. That didn't happen. So we had to go to families and approach them and say, families who've lost their loved one. I remember the first family that we went to, I went with my pastor, Pastor Sandile Zama, and my producer, Tiny Mungwe. We go to this family, and of course, our approach was that, in our Black families, when, a family has lost a loved one, you come and give the words to comfort them, and bring maybe a sermon, preach, and, read the word. So the pastor was able to do that. We approached the family eventually, which was very, very difficult. But of course, many families thought we were a bit crazy to do that. So, because the aim was to do the film in the KZN, because I understood the cultures from that side, because I come from there.
Yes.
And eventually I had to come back to Joburg because, after meeting with different families, they were like, no, we're not doing that, we just lost our loved one, and here you are wanting to make a film. But I think for me, what really kept me going and, wanting to do this film is the fact that, I'm drawn, I'm close to films, heritage kind of films, historical, anthropological kind of studies when it comes to film. And for me, I saw this film as a poignant film in many different ways. A film that will give an opportunity to those who have lost their loved ones afterwards, maybe when the COVID passes, or even now, then when they watch it, they can maybe find a form of healing. But also it's a film that when you watch in 100 years to come, for those who can watch it in that time, they will know what happened in this time. And they will know how our cultures were sort of disturbed from the norm, from what we usually do. And also we don't know if the situation will stay, in the sense that now we really have to continue with the restrictions that we had during COVID, and have 50 limited people who can attend the funeral and not perform certain rituals. I don't know, you know what I mean? So, but if you look at the film many years to come, you will know when they started, so I think that's the reason why I end up making this film.
And these are all things that are visible, or questions that come up as I was watching the film. And there's something that you had touched on that I wanted us to explore a little bit more, and that is, us as the viewers, we are invited into very intimate spaces of the family's mourning and their funeral process. What strategies from a filmmaking point of view, just from people that are entering the space as well, what strategies did you have to employ when making the film?
You know, filmmaking, documentary filmmaking is such a great responsibility because you're dealing with real lives, you're dealing with real people, you're dealing with real emotions, you know, so anything can happen. You know, when I remember when my main character, Umpo, you know, immediately after the funeral, I started engaging with him in terms of the audio so that we can have the audio for the film, the narration that I wanted. And he was in no way to talk about, you know, what has happened, because he was really hurt. I mean, obviously, and he was just crying. And I remember I had to ask my sound person and say, please step out. Let's just talk. Just allow him to talk. You know, I think I spent 2 hours and he just talked and talked and talked, and he vented, and he, you know, I gave him that chance. So saying that it's a great responsibility, and you have to be very sensitive. You need to be very patient. You know, if you're not a patient person, you cannot get into documentary filmmaking. Forget it, because you need to wait. You need to listen to people. I'm not a counselor, I'm not a therapist, but at some point of time, I play that part. So when you approach people, you need to learn people's skills. You need to know how to approach people, how to communicate with people. You need to know where to draw the line. That's very important, because I mean, if someone says, you've been making this film about me, but now I feel like I am not ready and I don't feel comfortable to go on, you must be able to reach that stage and say, and respect that person and say, okay, that's it. I need to, you know, respect that space and respect that decision and leave, you know. So it's many different ways, but at the same time, you know that you have your funders, the funders behind you, you have to deliver, you have that responsibility, but that greater responsibility comes to the people who are participants to your film. But unfortunately, Mpo and the whole Muduti family, actually, though they were in mourning and in pain, but they were able to understand and work with me, which I really appreciate. But as a documentary filmmaker, you need to be super sensitive and be able to adhere to all this sort of things around it.
And you absolutely touch on it when you say that there's a lot of considerations that come with, you know, documentary filmmaking. When that camera switches on, there's a lot of things that you need to consider throughout the filmmaking process as well. And I wanted to shift a little bit and talk to you about some of the stylistic decisions that you made when you were making this film. So you have that beautiful opening sequence right at the beginning with imagery and Umpo introducing himself in the voiceover, and then right at the end as well, it's a very powerful closing with that tracking shot of the bird across the sky. And I just was amazed, and I wanted to talk to you about you know, what visual or creative approaches did you have when you were making the film?
Thank you for that question. So I worked with a brilliant cinematographer, Manda Nindemutu, great sound person, Namim Shongo. Not only great in their craft, but also people who have worked in documentary filmmaking, who understands the narrative, but who understands the people. They have Ubuntu. So I had to choose my crew. I had to be very careful, you know, people that I bring on board. But Manda, I mean, I will work with them anytime, because both of them actually, because they understand me as a filmmaker. So Manda, I sat down with him and I told him exactly what I wanted. And fortunately, he listens, he understands, and he's able to carry through the, you know, the creative decision that I've made. because kind of for a film like this, there was no like, okay, now Amanda, please do this now, because it was a funeral flowing, you know what I mean? So observational, which is my kind of style that I like, observational films. So I briefed him. My main thing was that the Mam Tipupa, who has passed on as a spirit, she's a main character in the film. So it was very important that we capture that. We have a presence of Mam Tipupa throughout the film. And her son, Umpo. So they were both main characters in the film. And of course, the protagonist of the film is the death itself. It's the COVID-19. But I worked strongly with symbols. I like to work with symbols. So I strictly told him that we need to get those symbols, the spiritual symbols. So fire for me is very important. So you see the fire burning. You see impe for the incense burning, the incense burning. So it is very, very important for me, and that represents the spirit in a way. You see the bird flying at the end, and that's, I mean, you can interpret it in your own way as a viewer, but that can also be Mam Tipupa as she goes to the other side. The symbols in my filmmaking, I think all the films that you've watched that I've made, you will see the symbols and they communicate something. So that's how I've worked, but also I think I just wanted it to be fluid, to be handheld, but be able to hold it, you know, in a certain way. And yeah, I think creatively, those were the most important things that I wanted to bring across. The main character is Umpo, where we play with lights. There's natural lights. There's also, you know, the bulb that you see, the, you know, lights like that. And yeah.
Oh, that is incredible. And what a beautiful, very timely film that you've made, and a very sensitive and compassionate and incredible dedication to families who have also lost loved ones. And thank you so much for having been with us today, Omelga. This has been such an incredible conversation. And, you know, I appreciate the film on its own, but having spoken to you, I understand it very differently, and I appreciate it very much more. So thank you again for being with us today.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's a privilege to be part of Encounters, and I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I also want to thank Encounters funders and sponsors and their partners. And to every single person who is watching this Q&A, thank you so much for watching. Please do find the festival on all its social media platforms. You can also find it on its website at www.encounters.co.za, and Encounters will see you virtually everywhere. Thank you.